Okay, welcome to the April meeting of the Citizen Involvement Council. Our membership is comprised of 2 representatives from each of the neighborhoods within the city. We meet the first Monday of every month right here at City Hall and talk about projects that the city has going and some that we have going as well, and we have a good communication exchange. The procedure we follow for individual comments is this. Those members sitting in front of the electronic monitor will alert Katie electronically, and those members who are not sitting in front of a screen will tip their place card, and Katie will then add them to the queue for any comments or questions. As guests, you are invited to comment as well, but in order to join the queue, you need to fill out a little form on the back counter and hand it to Katie so that she knows that you want to participate. Once we've completed our roll call, we will ask our guests to identify themselves. And so let's get started.
Okay, Tony Uzwabunam. How's that?
Pretty close. All right.
Michael Berman. Paul Edgar.
Here.
Kathy Hogan.
Here.
Tom O'Brien.
Present.
And welcome back, Steve Anderson.
Here.
Yay! Faith Lee. Alice Watts.
Here.
And welcome for replacing Damon Maybe is Rita Mills from McLaughlin. Bob LaSalle.
Here.
Barbara Rankin. Oh, that's right. She's excused. Harris Gwynn.
Here.
Karen Morey.
Present.
Thanks, Denise.
Marianne Jensen.
Here.
Ingrid Rickenbach.
Here.
Todd Last.
Here.
Brian Boyce. Kim Dye.
Okay. Now we do have a couple, 4 guests in the audience. 2 are going to be presenting tonight. Well, 3. A pair and 1.
No, there's 2 pair.
And we do have 1 guest, I believe Denise McGriff, you're going to just sit in for a little while? Do you have any?
I'm taking a break from painting and going back on the scaffold.
Okay. So thank you for coming tonight. Laura, we're going to have you the second presentation, if you don't mind. So Linda and Steve Van Haverbeek, if you'd like to come forward. They're going to share with us the library expansion, and their presentation is prepared by the Oregon City Backs the Carnegie Library PAC.
Thanks, Alice. All of you, I don't know all of you, but I know many of you, and I'm glad to be here. Linda Orzen was called out of town, and I got this invitation to come and accepted. My husband Steve is here, and he was a member here, so I think a lot of you know Steve. I don't like looking at presentations and reading them to you, but I do want to make sure that the people in the audience that watches this on TV does get the information, so there may be a few slides I may read. So I hope you all know that on May 20th we have an election, and we have a ballot measure 3435. Yes, thanks, Tom. And there's some over here, and there's door hangers here. There's some other stuff over there if you want to get those. Go ahead. And so we have some words from Andrew Carnegie and Walter Cronkite that talks about the importance of libraries. And it's not just, of course, Oregon City's library. It's all libraries, but, you know, Andrew gave us the money. Which leads us to the next slide, a brief history of the Oregon City Carnegie Library. And I think Karen might be one of the people that helped get some of this information together for the last year's celebration of 100 years at that building, not 100 straight years, but using the building in some way at 100 years. And so notice that the library was dedicated in 1913. That's going to come up in the next slide. But there were stipulations to the money that we got from Andrew Carnegie, and that it was a site that was built enough to expand on, large enough that they could expand on it, that the city had to provide at least 10% of the costs each year in support of the library operations, and they had to use different materials such as brick so that it would last. And so the building, go ahead. There's a picture of Library Park, and that was set aside by Dr. John McLaughlin, and Oregon City asked for $12,500 in that time frame, which was, I think, a lot of money probably then. And McLaren from Portland, E.E. McLaren was the designer, and Robert Shelley was the builder. There's a little bit later picture of the library. This is the cake was from the celebration this last June, and that was a pretty humdinger of a celebration, as the next pictures are going to show us. Oh, it takes a second. With Mo, there's Paulette Peterson, the Poet Laureate of Oregon, and they were dedicating the library Poet Post. Cliff, one of the reference librarians, was Andrew Carnegie. Do you know Cliff's last name? I don't know. I don't. Top of my head. Don Wright, who's been active in our city, was help it along. So, okay. So the Carnegie Library has challenged us in the 21st century. It's too small. Our library district serves 54,000 people. Most of our books and things are in storage. We had to get rid of when we moved a lot of videotapes. They were too old to be replaced, so can only have limited materials. The building can't provide the technology that we need in the 21st century, and so over the last years, when I was on the library board at that point, I started some investigation of we just need to expand our library services and have a larger library. And what this is going to mean to Oregon City is that that's a slow computer. Space to read, relax, more room for collections, a larger meeting room, some room for the oh, now it's moving.
You got it going.
Yeah, we just got it going. For staff, here's some pictures when they had the middle picture is from the video that Linda Orson and Ingrid Aubrey put together when the robotics was here when we were reading the book on Robopocalypse. Thanks, Steve. And it has a quote for Bennett Cerf, who is the publisher and co-founder of Random House. So a lot of people out there, I mean, you guys are in the know, so I know you know all the answers because Karen's let you know. How are we going to pay for this expansion? It's going to be slightly over $10 million, and we already have $3 million saved from the library district funding, and we're getting $1 million from Clackamas County when they no longer were funding libraries directly, that each library is getting $1 million towards building. Some of the other ones are getting something else. And so we're looking for $6 million. And it looks like we're getting the $6 million from the bond measure, and in a way we are. We're borrowing $6 million, but we are repaying that $6 million with the money from the library district that was passed in 2008. And so whether you vote yes for it or no will not raise or lower taxes. All it does is give us permission to borrow the money. And I went today, so in case you have any questions at the end, I went and copied up the explanation from the voters pamphlet, and so I have some other stuff. So here's talking about libraries being more relevant today. I don't know if you've been to any of the programming. We've had some fabulous programming. Just last Friday, Steve and I went to First Friday Movies. They have documentaries, part of the time at Pioneer Center and some down at the end of the Oregon Trail. And they're excellent. It's nice. There have been like between 20 and 50 adults there, and there's discussion. Somebody comes and leads the discussion on the movie. There's authors often. Here we see Mayor Neely being John McLaughlin at the rededication, the 100-year celebration. We have all kinds of things at the library, all kinds of things for the kids, but it's not just for the kids. We have computers, we have tablets you can check out, you can take tutorials from the library staff and learn how to use those tablets. We are hooked into Library to Go. There's databases. Now, Karen can fill you in more about the databases. I've never used them, but I know that they have a Chilton's database, so if you want to fix your cars, that you can go in there and get directions on fixing your cars. What other databases do they have? They have a lot of genealogy.
Some genealogy.
And then we
lots
have
of
the
homework help.
homework help. They have digitized the early newspapers. They got a grant last year. So this is telling you that libraries are well managed. They're of value for the taxpayers. They're open for everyone. They provide essential services. They're resources for people seeking employment. We have opportunities for all kinds of utilizing technology. It's very important in tough economic times. This next slide talks about 3 of the concepts that have been suggested. None of them have been picked. These are only the suggestions from the architect that was helping with the work. And all of them look very attractive, and we'll have more to go on. And so we're talking about pretty much more than books in the 21st century. Lifelong learning, how to preserve our culture. And the last one is about how to get involved. And so I've put door hangers back there. I've put little handouts with some of this information with Wendell and John's number if you want to canvas on May 10th. If you have any more questions, you can look at the OCBCL website. There's also a panel discussion on the Willamette Falls Media that started this last Friday, talking about some of the same information. And I would be glad to answer your questions. I know I went through that quickly, so.
Do we have any questions? Oh, there we are. Faith.
Do you have any organized opposition?
No. Not that we know of. There were no, nothing in the voters' pamphlet suggesting,
But nothing that you've heard of?
and nothing we've heard of. All the 5 explanations were all positive. Sorry, I should
I
talk.
think people get it about the taxes.
No, I don't think they get it about the taxes. That's why I'm here.
Yeah, and that's significant.
It's very significant because we have the money. It's from the library district. And the reason that we have the money is that our wonderful library director that I'm just crazy about, so we won't hide that. I'm so proud of her and the city staff that they've been holding money back. And one of the reasons that they can hold money back is we've been in this little tiny Carnegie. We can't buy that many new books. We can't have that much staff in this 6,000 square foot space, 5,000 square foot space, and so we haven't been able to have as much staff, and so we've been able to save up that money. And then they plotted out how it would work with the bonds. They're going for, right now, if we get the bonds, it's lower than if we wait longer because the economy will go up and the cost of borrowing money will go up. They've looked at it and said that we don't want to borrow money longer than 20 years. And so it's going to be tight. It's going to be tight, that's for sure. But I don't think people understand, I won't have to pay any more money than I already have committed. I'm paying, it's on my taxes. And if you look at your taxes, it shows the library district is 37 cents per thousand of tax valuation on your property. And our library serves 54,000 people, but that's not just the city of Oregon City, but only the city of Oregon City, the voters get to say yay or nay because of the requirement to pass the bond measure, the requirement from the city that all bond measures would be passed by the electors.
Okay. Amy?
I have two questions. One right on top of that with the money. So if they take out a $20 million bond and 5 years down the
Oh,
road.
no, the whole
I
cost
meant
is
not 20 million, 20
six.
year. Sorry, 20 year. And 5 years down the road, there's not the money in the library district. Who's the backer?
The
of
library district is forever.
But I'm just saying, something happens.
The library district is forever.
A vote can cancel it.
Okay.
Just questioning.
It's against the general obligation bonds of the city.
Okay, that was
So,
what I just want to know
yeah.
who was the backer. Second line.
Does that,
Yeah,
Karen,
that's-
do you want to add something to that
I was just going
comment?
to say, the bottom line on a bond is, it is the full faith and trust of the city behind it. So if at some point in those 20 years there was a change, then yes, it could become a taxpayer issue.
Right.
At this point, with the district in place, the county commissioners cannot dissolve the district. It would take a countywide vote, and it's pretty unlikely that's ever going to happen. So looking at the life of the bond, the funds are there in the district to repay the bonds.
Well, you just always have to, I
But
just want to
anything
know
can
what's the
happen.
contingency.
Yeah,
and that
I
would
said
be-
if one of, as Paul's given us these lovely maps, if an earthquake happened and the county half fell into a great big
Yeah.
hole, things can happen,
Yeah, they
but
can.
it's 99.9% it'll
Oh,
be covered.
I just wondered what the back was. Okay, and the second question is, I know that they did a lot of research and a lot of studies, and it came to the best option they had at the time was to expand. Now that the city is in negotiations with the school district for the Mount Pleasant property, are we jumping ahead that maybe we should try for a city complex? I mean, are you still
The
think
city
that it's-
commission's already voted. That's a done deal.
Okay, I still think we might be jumping the gun at expanding, but. Okay.
With the plan to move the police department there, I think you'd probably use up most of the property. And we are moving ahead on the on-site expansion.
It's been in the works for a long
Oh, I know.
time, a long time. And this is just this go-round. I think from what I hear from my friends in town, this is probably the third go-round.
64 years.
Yeah. It was
1950
when they
was
went
the first
into
time
the
we looked.
Danielson's property. It was supposed to be temporary.
Oh, yeah, I remember. Okay.
Okay, Bob?
Linda, you might mention the cultural passes that are available.
Well, there's cultural passes available, paid for by the Friends of the Library, and you can use them in many places. I'm not current on where they are right now. I think it's the Art Museum, Portland Art Museum.
Big Mansion.
Yes, Pittock Mansion,
Japanese
Japanese Garden.
Gardens, the Children's
Children's
Museum.
Museum.
Yeah.
There's a whole list. You can
There's
check
like
it out
about
on our
8 of
website.
them, and so the
Air
Friends
Museum.
pay between $800 and $1,200 a year to pay for that.
So Linda, does that mean that you can get so many each month, and then once they're
No.
handed out,
No,
then you...
there's one set of passes. You have to go to the library and check them out. You have to return it. It's just like a
Oh,
book.
okay.
And one person can use it, or one group of people, whatever the conditions are that the place that you're visiting,
Then you return it that night.
and you return it that night. So it can be handed out to the next person. You have to get it in about an hour before the library closes.
Okay, very nice. I'm
But
glad-
it is very
thank you-
nice. When
thank
we
you for
first moved here,
explaining that.
we saw a lot of the city that way. It's good stuff. It's fun.
Good. Kathy?
Yes, so I had a couple of questions, like on the funding. So the county has already given you that 1 million?
They haven't given it to us actually. They've promised us.
Okay, and that's a one-time?
That's right,
that
one
large
time.
amount? But they will be giving you, each year after that, a certain amount
No,
towards?
they won't be giving us anything. We get money from the library district.
The annual amount comes, that's the division that Oregon City gets.
And that's not at all, that's voted on already. It's already in your taxes. The county commissioners have nothing to do with it. They don't determine it. So the $1 million is one time.
Okay, and then you have the 3 million that you've been saving.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're trying to simplify it for people.
And when you say
So what you're-
you mean Mo in the city and.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's, yeah.
yeah.
And then
I can't
other
save that
6
much.
You
million.
can't write me a check for three.
No. But the 6 million that you want to do for the levy or bond or whatever.
Bond.
Then that is going to be paid by not having to pay for,
Part of the money that's been
You're-
budgeted from the money in the library district
because
funding.
you haven't had to pay rent, and you're not going to have to pay rent anymore. You haven't had to pay rent. So that rent that you used to pay is now
Well,
going to
and,
be the...
and other things too, you know, some
Yeah.
of it's from the fines and the copy costs
Yeah,
and
well,
all
the
kinds of
fines aren't
things.
going to be as big as the...
No,
that
they're
you
not.
Were being charged to rent a spot. And if you went, you know, trying to make it so they understand that you're not
Right,
renting.
we don't pay rent anymore because we're in a city-owned building.
Yeah.
And we'll continue to be a city-owned building.
Okay.
And Linda, you did say earlier that you have not expanded your resources at the library because you didn't have any place to put them.
They
so
do
you're
buy-
saving
Right,
some
they
of
do
those
buy new
funds as
books and
well.
new things, but, you know, there's not as
Not
much
to the
as if you were in a
extent
bigger
that you
building.
would, yeah, and so that's a savings too.
But how are you going to pay down the line the increase in the staffing and
That's-
probably more books?
I think they've worked on the budget as much as I know, you know, and it's always iffy. Even when it was first passed, there was questions of whether the library district funding was enough. But it's what we have, and the city's being very frugal with your resources.
Paul?
I'd just like to take the opportunity, one, to thank the library board and everyone, because I've looked this over. This is a very smart deal. I understand it completely. The key to it, to me, is not just the fact that it's not going to up anybody's taxes, but we have other projects that the city is looking and has to accomplish, like building a new police station. And this ability to not have to add to people's taxes at this time enables some of the other projects that the city is going to have to face, the taxpayers are going to have to look at. And Maureen and you and the board and everybody, Karen and everybody that's been actively involved in making this happen, I just, you know, I'm not a hugger, but I feel like I should hug you for making it happen, because this is right. This is smart for our city.
It's smart in a lot of ways too, Paul. I stayed awake when I was on the panel discussion for the Willamette Falls Media, and William Gifford sat next to me and he enumerated a number of reasons why it's good for business to have a first-class library. It's good for business. It's good for the city. We attract people. You know, there's all kinds of things. To have an active Carnegie Library open to the public is wonderful. It's good. It's a community hub. Things that we couldn't do before. I was on the task force before all of this came about of what are we going to do with the Carnegie building. What are we going to do with it? We have to heat it. We have to maintain the park. We have to. And why would it be sitting empty? This is a good use. Good use.
Ingra?
I got to watch because I have to talk on the mic and look at you.
My question is any of the money going to go for parking for the people to go?
There's already they purchased parking lot
With
already.
With 7 spots, right?
No, it's 20 something.
20-something.
20 something spots. 22, 24.
So
At
is,
7th and
Jefferson.
Jefferson.
so is that the one across from Mike's?
Mm-mm.
No, it's next to the dental building.
Oh,
But it's not signed yet, you know, with designated sign on it. But also the other is that the parking at, behind the church, Atkinson Church, is city-owned,
the city, yeah, the Pioneer Center
Right.
parking.
and so people can use that. And there's been some discussion, and since things are not all finished and said, there may be a change in how the parking is on 6th. Did I do that right, Karen? You know, well, maybe,
Yeah.
but, you know, everything's not completely finished, Ingrid. But, you know, we had for the last how many years, the whole time I've lived in Oregon City, I've been a short timer, there's been all those concerts of the parks and people find places to park. And now we have more parking.
And the McLaughlin neighborhood uses the library a lot, and I think they're within walking distance, so it should not be an issue for them.
Should not be. And we want to be a good neighbor, and Mo wants to be a good neighbor. So, you know, she's keeping a lot of that in mind and trying to do the best she can. And the other is that I know that at least when I was on the library board at that point and looking at stuff, one of the things that we insisted on that it was on a bus line. And so it's just a block or two off the bus line so people can come on the bus.
Good. Steve?
Yeah, a couple questions. Number one, is it going to remain, the name remain Carnegie Library?
Yes, that's in the charter, right, Karen?
No, but it will remain.
It will.
Okay, number two, how much of this money that you need to raise is going to go to the upgrade of the original building?
I don't know that answer to that question. Karen, do you know some of that answer? I know they're going to do heating and air conditioning, and of course there's wherever the technology is that will go to that.
I think part of this, and I was going to make a closing comment too, is one of the things to keep in mind that planning costs money. So right now we have a concept drawing. I believe, I don't know if we've hired a project manager yet, but we have. I heard a yes somewhere. Until May 20th and more certainty, there's no answers to a lot of these questions. Those are only concept drawings. The final library may not look that way. A well-designed library doesn't need as much staff. So in answer to Kathy's question about cost of staffing, if we design the building right, we can make do with fewer staff people. It has a lot to do with sight lines, access, egress. But I know the library board, when I was on it, we were pretty firm that we go with some of the ideas that came out of the concept drawings, and that included the existing Carnegie building kind of becoming a gem in a new setting, and that it be an integral part of whatever is built. But that will necessitate upgrading, heating, cooling, maybe some minor internal changes. One of the best things, if you've ever been there in the summer when the air conditioning comes on, hopefully we'll get rid of the smell we can't figure out where it's coming from. That's been rather dramatic. But you'll see a lot more after May 20th when the bonds are approved, and we know that we have the money to move ahead with the planning.
And I was going to mention, and I forgot, and I would have summed up with it, was the fact that there are going to be more public meetings. Yes. I know there is a date for one. Is that it's April 30th, but I didn't know if that
Denise
date was. I know the date.
Yes, but and that's going to, after May 20th, some of the parking issues will be addressed. There will be a parking study. The city has certain standards for parking. So all of that is just it's not quite on hold, but it's going to move ahead much more quickly after the bond's passed.
And then you know that the library has to meet all the same standards in planning that any other building in the city meets. And we have incur the same costs there too. So there's lots of issues about how we're going to spend the money, and I don't know all the answers, Steve. And none of it's, as Karen said, is certain till it's done.
Till we got the scratch.
Tom?
Yes, I would like to add my thoughts to what Paul said relative to our library director, our library board, and our friends of the library, and the fine job they've done in putting this together. I'm a library user. Unfortunately, I have felt very handicapped the last several years. I routinely use a library in a neighboring city. I also, almost on a weekly basis, use the Multnomah County Library online because of their selection of resources. I visit other libraries at least once a month around the general area, simply because I don't have a home library. And I'd like to have one here in Oregon City where I can physically visit and use it in the manner in which I would like to use it for research.
Books in hand?
Well, research and books in hand and the marvelous historical documents that this city has that are in storage. I mean, that's a sin to take the kind of history we have with this city and lock it up where no one can see it. It was a marvelous thing to get the grant and get the newspapers available online. I've gone through, I'm not finished yet, but I've gotten over 100 different articles out of those old historic newspapers relative to my own personal family, who a very small fraction of them lived here in the city and owned businesses here. And I just find it marvelous that we can finally, after all these years, I moved to this area in 1974, and you know the state of our library, what it's been in that 40-odd years. So again, my congratulations particularly to the library director and the Friends of the Library and the Library Board for all of the hard work they put into this. And I look forward to it, and I recognize that from a ongoing cost standpoint, they've done a marvelous job of understanding the need to utilize just those funds which are available to them on an ongoing basis from the library district. The library district has committed to a set amount on an annualized basis, and that is what will be used to pay off the bond. And I think that's wonderful. After the bonds paid off,
And the library.
after the bonds paid off, think what else we can do with those monies, down the road.
Kathy?
Well, I wanted to say one more thing then, too. My husband and I went to Eugene. We just got back Wednesday, just to get away. We took the train. I always like to go to the libraries myself. And Eugene has a beautiful, big library, but unfortunately, they took the Carnegie Center and didn't use it, and they took it apart. I don't know whether they could repair it or not. So it's nice to see that the Carnegie Center is going to still be there. Where, it's going to survive. Where in Eugene, it didn't survive. It wasn't saved, and it's lost forever. And granted, they have a beautiful library. They have a lot of computers. There were a lot of people on it. I mean, many people using this library, and they actually have a city office up above. But they're going to move that because eventually they would expand up even onto the third floor. So it is nice to see that the Carnegie is going to be used appropriately, continued and taken care of.
If you have any more questions, you can go to the website and look at and tell people they can go to the website and look at all of this. You can look at the library website. You can look at the Oregon City Bex, the Carnegie Library website. There's lots of resources available, and spread the word.
Okay, I think
Vote yes.
I think Faith had another comment.
Just the concerts in the park are going to move out to the end of the Oregon Trail, right?
They're moving this year already.
Yeah. So somebody had mentioned the concerts in the park, so that's already, whether the bond passes or not.
Exactly.
Okay.
We're taking a lot of your time, but
Well, that's because we like to talk to you about this, so thank you. Does anyone else have anything else they want to? Oh, Denise?
Yeah. If you mind with my money.
No, I wouldn't mind at all.
Except I need your chair.
Oh. You can have Steve's chair. What do you mean?
No, I like Steve.
Well, thanks.
Hi, thank you, Alice. Denise McGriff, Chair of the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association. I just wanted to give you an update on what I know about what's going on, since I was piping up from the back, and supplement what Karen was saying. So the city has gone through a process to hire an architect. It is not the same architect that did the concept plans. So we will be taking another look at them, and the concept plans they're going to be set aside because we're not starting from scratch, but we're not starting there is the best way I can say it. And the city has also gone through a process to hire a construction manager, and I don't know if the contracts are signed yet, so I can't say who it is. I do know who it is, but I can't say. So those two things are in place. And so what Maureen is doing now is basically setting things up for when the election happens, but she's having some of these folks do a little bit of work, not a lot of work, but just a little bit, because you have to kind of get prepared, and you don't want to wait till May 21st to start ramping up. You want to start gradually figuring out what you have to do. The meeting that's on the 30th is going to be, I believe, Meet the Architect meeting, and I believe it's going to be at the library. I think it's at 7, but
Sounds right. Yeah.
but I haven't gotten the absolute word on that. So that's kind of what's been going on. I've been on the other side of this with the library director and working with some of the consultants and being on the review committees and things of that sort. But sort of last but not least, since Alice did bring it up, as you know, the McLaughlin neighborhood is now home to a lot of city services. And one of the things is that we're going to be doing is, just so you know, we're going to be scrutinizing any of the proposals that come forward on any new construction or buildings, because obviously we're a historic district. We have a lot of people in our neighborhood who are concerned about traffic. They're concerned about parking. We already have a traffic problem. We already have a parking problem. We have a lot of people from the county who seem to think that our neighborhood is a great place to park their cars during the day and leave them, and then with those of us who don't have garages. So the library is one thing, the Carnegie Library is one thing. We're taking a little bit more of the impact than many of the other neighborhoods, and we want to make sure that we don't end up bearing the brunt of all the negative things. We of course want the positive things, but we will be looking at everything, and we look forward to working with all of you on those items that are going to be coming up, particularly about the library. And Maureen is very, very sensitive about the impact that this might have on the neighborhood. So we really appreciate that. It's, with the good, there's also the bad. And I'm not saying that the library is bad, but there are the unintended consequences, which is one of the things we want to be able to look at to make sure that we can mitigate all those things. They will have to submit a traffic study. They will have to submit a parking study. As Linda said, they have to go through the entire land use review, site plan and design review, and historic review. So there's a lot of work that's going to be done, and I hope that all of you can participate, because many hands make light work, and we'll all be able to get the building that we want. We hope. Not everybody's going to be happy about it, but they're going to do the best they can. And I think I'm very confident with the construction manager they've hired and the architectural firm that they've hired. I think we've got a solid team, and with Maureen leading the pack, I think it's going to be, we'll cross those bridges as they come to them. And we know that there's going to be some hiccups, but I'm confident as a resident here in Oregon City and as a neighborhood person, I think that, we all work together, we can overcome any hurdles.
Well, Denise, you mentioned there were some things you couldn't share with us tonight. Can you tell us if we're looking at, with these new architects, a single-story building or a two-story?
We're starting with a clean slate, basically.
We're not going to use any of the previous designs as a
I think that they're going to take a look at the designs as
Uh-huh.
a starting point. But again, when you have a new firm, new ideas, there may be something out there that we haven't thought of that might work. And again, as Linda said, those are concepts, but this is just my opinion only. Those concepts are being set aside to take a fresh new look at everything. That was just an idea to give people, well, this is what it could be. But there's A, B, C, and then there's a D, E, and F out there. There's other ideas. I don't know what they are
Some
yet.
of us are anxious to know what it's going to
Yeah, but
look
I
like.
think that's part of what they want to do. They want to talk to people, and they want to find out about what we think. And that's one of the things that I was really impressed with their proposal, was that they said, we understand you've had this work done, but we really want to dig in, and we really want to get down to something very, very specific. And they're going to be doing a lot of talking to people and a lot of listening, and I'm looking very much forward to that process. And hopefully everybody will be involved.
One question, is this a design build?
It's what they call see if I can get the terms right. John, you might have to help me. It's when we put the contract out, it was a
CMGC, Construction Management General Contractor.
Yes. So it probably will be a little bit of both.
Well, they typically hire a contractor early to work with the architect to help. So the design is still coming through the architect. It's not the contractor who's designing it, but he's well involved and can, price,
get a better
shop
better
some
price.
of the proposals, you know,
Right.
on certain things, and maybe provide the architect with some guidance on what would be a less expensive way. Maybe not,
So yeah,
maybe
it's-
not a cheaper way, but
No,
a less
it's
expensive.
not value
more
engineering, but it is that
It's close.
process. And I really think that that is going to serve us very well, because you've got construction manager, architect, contractor, they haven't hired that person yet, and they're all going to be working together as a team instead of what usually happens. You have the low bid, you get your contractor in, they're kind of not working in your best interests, and then you end up with, you know, oh, well, you can do that, but cha-ching, and then here goes all your change orders. And I think this process will be much better, and that's not going to happen. So anyway, thank you.
Okay, thanks for adding some comments.
Sure.
Okay, thanks to the Van Haverbecks for doing that. Our next presentation is Laura Turway, our Oregon City Planner, for sign code update and other code changes.
So, Tom, you had to be here
Good
tonight.
evening.
Let's forget which is
All right, so I'm here this evening to talk to you about our sign code update. The last time I was here, I believe, was in July or so. And since then, we've had a lot of public process, so I'm back to give you an update and tell you where we are as of now. It was one of the City Commission top goals to look at our signage standards in Oregon City and see if they're appropriate or not, if there need to be any changes. We currently regulate signs on private property. This is a snapshot of some of our current regulations. So how many signs you can have, how big they can be, where they can be placed, and so forth. So the City Commission wanted us to go through an intensive public process to come up with standards which are safe, clear, and most importantly supported by the community. Our legal disclaimer here is that when we regulate signs, we can't regulate the content of a sign or what it says. We can regulate time, place, and manner. So placement, size, materials, height, stuff like that. So there's some examples of some signage in our city. We had quite a project team working on this. So we had a planning department which led this project. We got some money from the planning department to hire a consultant called Environment Issues, and they led our public involvement campaign. They came up with a strategy for us to make sure that we did talk to as many people as we could, as often as we could, and as a wide variety of the population as we could as well. They had a sub-consultant, UrbsWorks, which worked on some urban design features. We also had a community advisory team, or a CAT team. I'll talk about it in a little bit as well. And then obviously the community was a very large part of our project. So just summarizing how we got to where we're at. We had an early community engagement process. We had 17 community briefings in a series of 2 months or so. We asked people what they liked or didn't like about the sign code, changes they wished that we had. Our sign code currently talks about regulations on private property. It didn't talk about regulations in the public right-of-way. So that was something that people wanted criteria on. We have a project website, ocsigncode.org. We put everything that we worked on that website, so everyone could follow our project along, comment on it. All those comments were put on the website, so anyone could see what we're working on and what the responses were. Very transparent process. We sent out email updates, trail news articles. We had an open house in November. Our community advisory team was put together from 11 different people representing different groups. Thank you to the Neighborhood Association Citizen Involvement representatives, Tom and Bob. And Amy was on there as well, actually. So we had a process for a community advisory team. People had to apply, and they had to represent the variety of positions. The mayor appointed everybody. It worked out well because we had 11 people apply, and so everyone made the CAT team. They met 4 times over a series of months, but more importantly, we sent them hundreds of pages of work to read at home, and they did. And they gave us the recommendation as city staff. They picked all the bigger issues and formed a recommendation for city staff. Staff took that recommendation, and then we did a draft code with it. At the open house, the public had their say on 13 of the top issues that were at that point unanswered, so they gave guidance to the CAT team, who then gave guidance to the city. So at this point, we have a staff recommendation for proposed sign codes. You may have got a green postcard in the mail. We mailed them out, over 10,700 of them on May 10th. And March 10th, thank you. Our easy brain. Directing you to both the city website or the project website where we have the draft versions. I'm going to go through a couple examples of what the most signage you could possibly see on a property. So this is residential. It's not to scale. We didn't really have the money to hire artists or anything like that. This is paint. So you can have if you're a single family home, typically you can have a wall sign or a freestanding sign, so one not attached to the building, and a couple of smaller signs, and then our new sign code would allow a sign in the right of way. So the city property in front of yours, typically a sidewalk or a planter strip or something like that. Multifamily, the most you could have is, again, a couple of signs. So 1 or 2 bigger signs, and then those ancillary signs could be no bigger than 6 square feet, and then 1 in the right of way as well. For conditional uses, that would be like a church or a school in a residential neighborhood. They have to go through a conditional use process with our planning commission. So they get a couple of big signs and then a couple of small signs, and that's about it. Our commercial zoning designations, you could see the scenarios. So you can get a couple of big signs and a couple of small signs, but they can be different forms, whether they're a flag or whatnot. So there's options there. So in the process, we have had a couple of planning commission work sessions so far. Our first public hearing is the 14th, so Monday. And at that public hearing, we will have a presentation from our consultant reviewing our public involvement process. We'll also thank all of our community advisory team members with certificates as well. And then we'll reference our code, but we'll get into the details of the code at a different meeting. So the sign code requires review and approval of the planning commission. If they choose to recommend approval, it goes to the city commission. And if they choose to approve it, it would be approved by ordinance. So at the very, very latest, you're looking at approval in September-ish, and it would be effective 30 days later. So one aspect of this is enforcement. So we're putting together a plan to come up with a comprehensive and sustainable enforcement program. So it's not that great right now. It's not that great. So we want to fix that. Yeah. We put together.
We like that you admit it.
Yeah.
Breaking news.
But we acknowledge it, and then now we have the opportunity to do something about it. Here's a copy of those green postcards that were sent. So if you got these in the mail, again, we don't want to post any signs on your property. It's just for regulations of what you can do if you wanted to post a sign on your property or in the public right-of-way. The first hearing, again, is on Monday, and then we'll get into a work session on April 28th where we'll talk about the details of the proposed code. We want this to be a really good product, so we want as many people to look at our proposed code as we can and give us comments. So it'll sort of be a living document, and I assume it will be kind of tweaked and amended as we go through this approval process. So the next draft will come out May 12th. We have a draft for March 10th. We're taking everyone's comments, Since the draft came out, we met with the TAC and Planning Commission and got a couple of suggestions on where to tweak things. So we have a new draft coming out in May. And we would love for everybody to take a look at it, read it, ocsigncode.org, or on the city website, orcity.org. You can link to it. You can send me an email. I would love to tell you all about it, all of the proposed changes. In general, it is kind of similar to our existing code, but it would limit the number of smaller signs on property. There is an option to allow murals on buildings if they're approved by an arts committee. There's a couple of tweaks here and there, but any questions?
I have one, and then Faith, I'll get you in just a minute. At the May 12th, when you give out the next draft, will that include any enforcement information?
Yes, so we have a letter, it has a table of contents, so it's really not a letter, it's kind of a longer book. But we have a draft plan on how to address enforcement. It requires some decisions by the City Commission on how they want us to move forward. But that should also go out on that same date in May.
Okay, good. Faith?
Don't we still have a billboard that's up on 213?
Yeah,
Isn't that like it's been 10 years and it's not, is that anything ever going to happen with that?
So our current sign code says, when it was adopted in 1993, if you have a sign, even if it was placed legally, your sign has to go away in 10 years. And so 2003 came and went, and the city never enforced that sign code. So one of the problems is we had sections of our code that later we didn't have the political will or desire to enforce. And so we have a lot of signs now that are out there that were not allowed to be there. In the proposed code, if there is a sign that was installed legally, they would be able to keep it until the owner chooses to remove it. But in that document I was referencing that's going to the City Commission, there would be options for incentivizing removal of legal non-conforming signs. If it was illegal and they placed it, then they'll still have to get rid of it. So there's a big educational component that will have to go in before the sign code is actively enforced to let people know.
For another 10 years, huh?
Yeah, there was one down off Main Street Extension that they had to remove because it was structurally unstable, but there are 16 billboards right now in the city. 2 of the properties with billboards on them, there's development applications on that would require removal. But yeah, we had a billboard company on our CAT team, and they submitted some comments that you'll see in the packet as well regarding billboards and digital signs and stuff like that.
Anybody else?
Yeah, my question really was on the grandfathering. I can see this as an opportunity to come up with solutions, and I've just, so if there is somebody that has a sign and the code now effectively makes that sign illegal, what restrictions, and if there was nothing that they were doing prior to this that was illegal, then are they grandfathered?
So if it was constructed legally, our current, the March 10th draft says it can stay forever till the owner removes it. In the draft that's coming out in May, we've added another thing that says if it's damaged more than 50% of the cost of the sign, it would have to be removed. It couldn't be rebuilt.
Could there be a clause or anything if there's a change of ownership?
We don't track ownership, and we're not sure how. Right now, they're all owned by Clear Channel, or they're all Clear Channel billboards for billboards. We don't have a category for non-conforming signs at all in the city.
So almost all of these big billboard signs are all Clear Channel.
They all are.
In Oregon City.
In Oregon City.
Everything in Oregon City is.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
But we don't have a separate database for non-conforming signs. one of the things that we want to work on is the enforcement piece of this. So we're proposing a plan to work area by area to assess each property and figure out what signs are non-conforming, and then work to see if they're legally non-conforming or not. And then if they are not legal, so they were put there illegally, they weren't allowed to be there in the first place, then they would have to be removed. And we would work through with each property trying to implement our new sign code.
Is there something I noticed in the kind of the design image up there? Is there something about the let's say the square inches or square footage of a sign that's an allocation to a building, or is there? How do you make sure that they don't try to put up some huge sign, or some place has greater ability to put up more signage? How is that algorithm? How is that determined?
In our current sign code for wall signs, it's dependent on the length of the wall, regardless of how many tenants are in that. So if one tenant wants to take up all the square footage, as far as the city is concerned, they can. So usually the owner of the building kind of divvies that out. In the new proposed sign code, it was recommended to us from multiple people to look at each of the tenant space. So for each lineal foot of tenant space on the facade of that building, you would have a certain square footage of wall sign. For freestanding signs, now it's based off of the frontage of your property, and in the proposed code is also based off the frontage of your property. So the bigger frontage you have, the bigger sign you can have. There are no proposed changes to the size of the freestanding signs on private property, but there is a proposed change that says if your frontage exceeds 600 feet on an arterial, that you could have 2 freestanding signs. So thinking we have a map of which properties that means, but it's less than a handful or 2. So it would be like the college could have a couple of freestanding signs because the frontage is so big if they have multiple entrances or something like that.
Anyone else? Oh, Tom.
Yes,
I don't see you, but go ahead.
I'm on there.
You are? Not on mine, but.
I'm going to ask.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm probably in the wrong place. Excuse me. I'm going to ask a difficult question, and I probably shouldn't do it, but I'm going to anyway.
Please do. We want this to be good. We want the difficult questions.
It's been my observation that there is a significantly large number of signs that are in the city, have been erected without the purchaser applying for a sign permit. And on at least a couple of occasions, I've had conversations with code enforcement and been told that they don't even know who owns the sign. Have you any idea what percentage of the signs that are out there in our city today actually physically have applied for and received a bona fide sign permit?
No. And there's no good way to answer that question. So sign permits are good for the life of a sign. And in 2003, we got an internal database, so everything is digitized. Before that, we have binders by year of signs. So there's no database. So when we go back to do enforcement of the new sign code, it's going to be very difficult because we'll have to go through the years to figure out when a sign was there, look to see if we physically have a sign permit or not.
Could a summer intern take those binders and submit that information into a usable database so that both planning, one of the problems is it's shifted from one department to another over the years. And I'm not sure the records have even been shifted from one department to another when those changes took place.
Enforcement is a good question, and enforcement's been had by multiple departments, but sign permits have always been through the planning department. So we have sign permits have always been with us. So the plan is, what we're proposing is that planning be in charge of enforcement, that not rather than multiple departments kind of do it, and we have a lot of things on our list, it be assigned to one department who is in charge of it, so it's at the highest part of their list. It's not
I think it would be very helpful to use a summer intern to gather that information, and, since they're computer literate normally, they should have no trouble at least putting the basic information out of the binders onto a database.
I support any new staff or interns that we can have.
John?
I just wanted to speak a little bit to what I think we're getting to, which is having a really good sign ordinance seems really like a good idea. When you start talking about permitting those signs, tracking those permit signs, and enforcing on those signs, I liken it to the sidewalk problem that we have. They get bounced around from department to department often because you typically can't charge enough for a permit to cover the cost to issue the permit. Issuing the permit might be covered under that, but then dealing with the identification, inventory, follow-up, all the things that you as citizens, especially those of you who worked really hard on this program, expect, right? The expectations are pretty high because you see all this energy in it, but the permit fees would probably be nearly the cost of the sign sometimes to manage that program. Now, I'm hoping that the outlook's a little better than what I just painted, but I still think that we struggle to find that balance between appropriate charges for a permit and the cost involved in going after it. Now, using interns is a good suggestion, but that's only as good as the intern and as long as they've been there usually. And the enforcement piece is another pretty big one. And I think the public and you citizens who study this need to recognize that if that revenue isn't there to enforce something that hasn't been enforced before, and now we're asking for that enforcement, you really got to ask yourself, where do you want that money to come from? Do you want it to come from existing programs, or are you willing to support that more? It's probably not going to come from the permit fees that are associated with the sign itself. So I've got mixed emotions about this. I really dislike what I call visual pollution that signs create. But the balance to that is similar to the sidewalk issue. And then for the department that gets to manage the permitting issue, you can have a responsible, reasonable property owner who you're really kind of turning off by large permit fees. And we see that with the sidewalk issue is a good example. You got someone who wants to replace their sidewalk and do the right thing, but they really get frustrated by the permit costs and the process by which you have to go through. And yet, everybody else expects the sidewalk to be inspected and those kind of things. So I definitely struggle with this particular issue and how we're going to carry it forward into a program that's successful and people's expectations are set at a reasonable level, for enforcement. So.
Tom, did you have some more comments?
Yeah, I had another comment in reply to what John is saying there. I have over 24 years background in the sign industry, so I'm very pro-sign. But by the same token, I've had experience in the Pacific Northwest, 3-state area, Northern California, a good chunk of Ohio and Indiana and Kentucky. And I know that signs can be a positive influence, both in creating business, new business, if they are done properly, and if they are regulated properly. We have a problem in this city. We don't have sufficient business to build the tax base that we need to provide the services and so forth that the citizens want. And other cities are able to, through whatever means, do a more than adequate job of enforcing. Some cities are very lax, as we have been. Some cities, and I'll point to Mercer Island, Washington as a good example, you don't get by with a thing there unless you pay appropriately. And therefore, from an advertising perspective, which is the purpose of a sign for a business, if you're wanting it free, or you're putting up something that's made on a piece of corrugated, you're really detracting from your business and the businesses in the vicinity of your business. If you do it right, you will get more business for the entire neighborhood, the whole community. And that's one thing we're overlooking, is individually people are saying, oh, I want to have my little hand-painted sign out there that's on a piece of corrugated because it's cheap. Well, yes, it's cheap, and it's really staying to the general public. I don't expect to be in business very long.
Bob?
Well, about a year and a half or 2 years ago, David Fraser stated that it would cost about $60,000 to hire a part-time code enforcement person to follow up on sign code issues. We have a September, hopefully September, completion of this project, and then the city staff will probably be starting to get into the next biennium planning for the budget, and which would be done the following spring. So I think the timing to try to get something into the budget for code enforcement couldn't be any better.
Yeah, good. Yeah. Anyone else for Laura? Have questions for Laura? Okay, thank you very much.
Actually, lastly, I just wanted to thank you to everyone who has had part of this process. It has been a lot of hours and a lot of time and a lot of people, and we really, really appreciate it. We want a good product, and we think we have one. So, thanks.
Thank you. Okay, next up is Ask Oregon City Public Works.
Great. Well, there's a lot of things going on in Public Works. I had to write myself a list just to remember all the things that I wanted to talk about. First of all, I sent Katie an email, and I think you forwarded. Maybe you forwarded it for me, Katie. And Katie, I didn't check in, but there's a lot going on with regard to public education and water quality. So, just like to share that information with you. Sometimes it doesn't raise to the level of importance to come to before the City Commission. But I think they're important programs. We have an event that's coming up at the community college, which we do every year, which focuses on 4th and 5th grade students that are in the Clackamas Basin, drainage basin, and which includes Oregon City. So anyway, that's not something I think unless you have a 4th or 5th grader you can attend, but it's still a pretty cool event. So there's just a variety of things that we do. Lots of times it's just collaborating with other agencies in a monetary way to help support something like Channel 6 has a fair amount of stories on water quality. They feature some of those. So that link is on there, and you can see some of the videos that they put together for us over the years. So just take a look at that, and I hope it's not clutter, email clutter for you. So no, you're not going to get tested on it, but you might find something in there that you'd really like. The other thing is we've been almost up to our eyeballs in wastewater master planning lately. Tomorrow night there's a work session that's going to provide a detailed update on some of the sewer master planning that we've been doing. I know I've talked to this group. It's probably not the most interesting work that we do, but we find it pretty interesting. So it's typically
pretty
the
important.
community. So very, very important work. The big piece that I think you'll find if you come to the meeting is that we have several areas in Oregon City that are currently under capacity under a particular size storm event. So while we have both a sanitary sewer collection system and a stormwater collection system, our sanitary sewer system, like many others, is influenced by rain. So whether it be a storm drain connection that's been connected to a sewer line for years, or whether it's somebody's roof drain, or whether it's just a leaky pipe, the sewer flow goes up significantly in some cases when it rains a lot. And so what we've found after quite a bit of evaluation is a lot of our sewer system looks leaky and looks under capacity. So when that happens, and we know about it, and we've documented in a report, the next discussion that we'll be having with the City Commission is what to do about it. So if you're interested in sewer capacities and the impact that we have with our existing system on existing residents and definitely new development, you need to come to that meeting. It'll be televised too, so maybe you don't need to come, but you can watch it there. Staying with the wastewater theme, we've got our Barkley Hills Sewer Pump Station. So if you're in the Barkley Hills neighborhood, you know where that pump station is. If you're not, you probably don't, but it's down at the bottom end of Peter Skeen Road. And this project is out to bid. It's scheduled to open tomorrow morning, well, tomorrow at 2 actually, but that'll be a good project to get underway. It's estimated to be somewhere between $290,000 and $330,000, depending on how the bidding environment is. So that one should be out to construction fairly soon thereafter. Claremont Way Waterline Replacement and Pavement Rehabilitation Project. That is also out to bid right now, and I think that opens in maybe the following Tuesday. And it's a $850,000 project. That's what we're estimating for that one. So very similar to what we did on the first half of Claremont Way, and so it'll take it from basically the Hillendale Park to Leland and Myers Road intersection. So that's moving forward. Also, we haven't got them out to bid yet, but we're making progress with the 2014 ceiling projects and the pavement rehab projects. So they're the projects that we typically build using your pavement maintenance fees. We're working on, we're taking the concepts that we developed for the downtown alleys. There's 2 alleys that we're working on. One's between 7th and 8th on the railroad side of Main Street, and the other one's between 8th and 9th on the railroad side of Main Street. And they're pretty basic. The desire was to put in a concrete surface similar to what we have on Main Street. But in order to do that, we know all the utilities in those alleyways are old and need to be replaced. So we'll be replacing water, sanitary sewer, and then we're doing some stormwater work to make sure those areas drain well without any flooding or other kind of problems like that. So those projects are moving forward and will be out to bid fairly soon. Still making progress on the Leland Myers Road concept plans. We've been to a couple of neighborhoods, and we'll plan to go to a couple more. We're trying to inspire some feedback on that. We're developing a web page, and we'll be asking people specific questions, so there'll be a survey opportunity there. We're also checking in with planning to make sure we get the kind of the legislative approval process right, so we're not having too many meetings and then having to have them again. So the legislative process means that we would adopt those concept plans, and they would be similar to they'd be an extension of the transportation system plan. So it would be meaningful for the development community, it'd be meaningful for the neighborhoods, it'd be meaningful for the city council, and it'd be meaningful if we were to apply for grants for those for that corridor. So that's why we think it's important to make sure we go through the proper steps with regard to what it's local land use approval. So it'll be our planning commission and city commission approval, and there'll be open houses and or at least one open house for that as well. So that's coming up. We kind of got a little bit busy with the Union Pacific bridge removal. We didn't do any of the work, but we worked with Union Pacific to get them access, and then just overall kind of monitoring that project as it pulled the bridge over and moved it up onto the Oregon City side of the Clackamas River. Waterbird Park and some of the rockfall response, and more importantly, kind of slope assessment. Just looking at we've hired a geotech to look who's done work in the park before. I think we had some assessment work done in the late 90s and 2009, 2010, and so we've hired that same geotech to come back in, kind of take a look, provide us a report with their recommendations. We also did a walk along the top of the slope, kind of looking for any signs of landslide. We didn't find anything like that, but we do find a lot of neighbors that live along there and I don't know how many of you know this, but there's a public right-of-way that runs pretty much along the top of the slope. So the property lines are actually quite a ways back from the top of the edge of the slope. And so just looking at some of that mapping, it was kind of a new discovery for me to figure out really kind of where our property, where the right-of-way line is in relationship to the top of the slope. And so there was a full group of us, code enforcement included, because we have some people that are kind of extending their yards, and a lot of yard debris dumping right at the top of the bluff, and sight distance limbing, those kind of things. So it was just good for us to walk that and first determine that, you know, it doesn't look like there's any landslide potential. There's been years and years of history of rockfall, so I think what we found recently with this recent rockfall was pretty consistent with what's happened over the years in that area. There's been a couple of quarries that we found in that area that I didn't realize were there, but
John, will you remind us where that is, Waterboard Park?
Waterboard Park is, oh boy. It's above the Armory. It's above the Public Works Yard. It also extends to Creed Street and beyond. I'm trying to think of the name of the streets, the cross streets there, but it's actually a pretty lengthy piece of property.
Where the old road used to be?
Where there used to be an old roadway there. Promontory, I imagine, is what they called it back then. But yeah, so it's heavily used. I think the intent is to try and get public access back in there, but we want to take our time with that and evaluate that, make sure the city's doing all it can to provide users notice that it's a use at your own risk kind of a pathway. And
So it's not closed to public access?
it actually is closed right now.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Some TriMet initiatives. I was just wanted to pull it up online. I think there's TriMet's reaching out to the community, and I think it's a good opportunity for this community to share with its neighbors that the TriMet is working on the Southeast Corridor Plan, and they've got a pretty nice website. Really, all you need to do is search TriMet and look for community input, and they're kind of seeking out information on bus routes. So if your neighborhood members are using the bus routes, we've been meeting with them, talking to them about some of our concerns, and they're also sharing with us that, you know, well, we hear you, but we want to hear from everybody in the community. So be sure and take a look at that. Same thing with Metro. They've got a web page. Just again, go to Metro, and there's on their front page is a Get Involved page, and they're doing they're asking for public comment through May 5th on a variety of transportation-related topics. The Regional Transportation Plan, which we've talked about, and there's a couple others that I'm drawing a blank on. Active transportation, which is more about biking and walking, and so take a look at those resources as well. But it's been consuming a fair amount of our time to kind of stay up to speed with some of those events. So. With that, I did make copies of, just so you could share, there's 20 copies of the Leland, Lynn, Myers Road kind of limits, so you can share those with your neighbors. And then I think I made 20 copies, so I'm not sure how many are in here.
It should be enough.
And then I made 40 copies of these, so I think each one of you could take a couple, and if you want a few more, we can get them for you. But the second packet is just showing the surface seal projects and then the pavement rehab projects. And that's all I have.
Thank you.
Looks like Tom has a question.
Oh, he does.
Hi, John. Over the last couple of weeks, there have been two distinct, what appear to be emergency repairs within a 1 mile stretch or so on South End Road. Can you enlighten us as to what's going on there and what's the need for the repairs?
I think one of them is placement of a fire hydrant. That's the one closest to Partlow. And there was just a quite a distance between hydrants there. I don't know if they're planning to do more than one, but I know the one that's there with the plate on it today is a fire hydrant. And then the other one down near the grade school was two old vaults and valves that weren't even connected to our water system. They were abandoned years ago, and the old valve boxes were there, and the vaults themselves. So they made a decision to open that up and demo it, remove what piping they needed to remove, and then backfill it.
Thank you very much. I know we're going to get questions at our meeting here coming up.
Paul?
On the sewer improvements, how much encumbered funds do we have available to fund out some of these projects so that the money has to come from someplace when we're making a lot of repairs or a lot of improvements that are identified critical and that are not in an area where we have significant new construction? They may be just old pipes, inadequate capacity for what's now trying to be pumped through it. Do we have all the funds available?
We have, first of all, my gut tells me no, we don't, okay? But we haven't done the rate analysis that comes along with the master plan. So out of the master plan will come a pretty extensive list of capital improvement recommendations. And with that, we'll want to match that up with a rate analysis so that we can actually see where we're at, what are our debt payments. But right now we spend about $500,000 on capital per year. So that usually, in the past, has typically been going to pump station upgrade projects, and now we're realizing the need to spend that money on pipelines. So that combined with SDCs have paid for a lot of the pump stations because they've been capacity related projects. Some of these capacity problems that we're seeing in the collection system are in basins that are already built out. So there won't be a lot of SDC revenue that would be contributed. It'll need to come from rates. Those are our two revenue sources.
So you're anticipating if it comes out that we need a lot of money, that we're just going to have to up the rates to cover it?
That, or any grants that we could acquire would be another option. Loans using existing rates, kind of like what the library's doing, to try to determine, well, can we pay this off over time? Should we use that method? Should we borrow to pay for sewer rates? That,
And in the past, I don't know, maybe it was about 10 years ago, I can remember some dialogue about infiltration into the pipes and systems, as you related to, in stormwater type events. And all of a sudden we see this where the pipes really are, have you done these analysis of these areas to try to determine where we have this highest level of infiltration?
We've done some, and as you'll hear in the presentation tomorrow, we put in about 12 flow monitors and monitored them through a wet weather event, and that's kind of that's the limits. But that's not very many monitors for a city our size. We've got about 148 miles of sewer, so to try to monitor that with 12 monitors it gives you a good understanding of what our system, how it responds in wet weather. But there's more to be done there, Paul. Yeah. The other things that we've done is we have a TV inspection program here. We've got a van that goes out and runs a camera down the lines and looks at those things. We've done a fair amount of that, but that's time consuming as well, and given our staffing levels, it's not robust. It's not nearly robust enough.
Okay, thank you.
Tom?
Yeah, one other thing, John, I was just looking at your pavement rehab projects and so forth that you handed out. Just a matter of note, the area on Central Point between Warner Milne and Parish is significantly deteriorating. So since it's not on this year's, I'd like to suggest that you maybe consider doing something with it next year, because that is just falling apart right now. And it's continuing to get more and more and more traffic. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot, John. Next on our agenda is our Chamber of Commerce update, and I understand, Karen, you're going to report for Amber?
Actually, Katie's passing around some information that Amber wrote up, and you'll have to kind of try to wait till you get it somewhat in your hands. But just for your information, if you were not able to attend the State of the City luncheon, the video prepared by Willamette Falls Media Center is now available online if you'd like to see the presentation by Mayor Neely. There's a link to it on the Chamber website. Excuse me. You all missed a lot of fun at our Chamber After Hours and Jeopardy game. Amber wanted to especially thank several people, but particularly those present, Tom O'Brien and Katie Riggs for bringing refreshments and Katie a map. John Lewis for being a wonderful participant in Jeopardy. And
the story behind that.
I was on the losing team.
And Mayor Neely wanted nothing to do with you.
He didn't want anything to do with me. So I don't know.
and they were hard questions. They actually almost stumped me on something. The front, take note of some other activities and events, but let's see. We want to make a special point for all of you who've shopped at Fred Meyer. One of their employees, Sylvia, and I'm not going to embarrass myself trying to pronounce her last name, but Sylvia was a regular up there, biggest smile and the littlest woman you'd ever see. And she underwent a traumatic medical condition that resulted in multiple amputations. So because her son is involved in high school sports, the band moms have gotten together and they're sponsoring a fundraiser to help the family. And it is on May 2nd. Tickets are $25. They are still looking for donations. And Amber has an introductory letter, and then there's an invitation on the back to the event. And if it doesn't ring a bell, as soon as you look at the pictures on here, you'll know who I'm talking about. So any questions on anything in Amber's report?
No, I guess we can
We're good.
We can read it to get more details. Do you, Kathy?
Yeah, so do they have like they did for the officer that passed, a bank account that you can go contribute to?
They're working on, they have one right now, but I think they're kind of working on the mechanics. You know, it's a problem when something like this happens rapidly to set up a nonprofit.
Well, is there some way that through Katie that when it is set up that you could send
They
it
are
out
accepting donations now. So
Which-
there is information on here.
Okay.
And they are accepting donations, and then all of the proceeds from the benefit will go to help the family.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Karen. And what a wonderful, generous opportunity for us to help Sylvia and her family. Thank you for that. Next is the approval of our minutes, which you all should have received via email. I would entertain a motion to correct or approve.
Move to accept or approve.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Ingra, thank you. Is there any discussion before we vote? Hearing none, we'll take the vote.
Tony?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Amy?
Aye.
Kathy?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Steve?
Abstain.
Faith?
Yes.
Rita?
Yes.
Alice?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Harris?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
Ingra? Marianne?
Yes.
Todd?
Abstain.
Okay, that passes with 2 abstentions.
Okay, thank you. Our next item of business is unfinished, and I just had a couple of things that I wanted to remind the members, since we had spoken of it previously, and that was that in May, I was going to remind you all to share any success or progress you've had in setting up neighborhood watches. Remember, we were going to see what we could do within our neighborhoods and then come back with any programs that we had in place or suggestions or things we learned that we can share with the other members. And then also in May will be our elections, and we'll be talking about that when we get down to committee reports. And related to the Neighborhood Watch, Paul, I hope you would be willing to talk now about the community emergency response teams, because as we consider getting neighborhood watches started in each of our individual neighborhoods, there is a community emergency response team program that the fire department in cooperation with the police department is going to start activating, and Paul, I believe, is going to be working with them on this.
Yes.
Could you speak to that?
We're in the first phase of effectively restarting CERT in Oregon City. The fire department has a dedicated person funded to be responsible for emergency management. And we have with Chris Wadsworth on the police department almost the same type of person. But with Chris, she believes that we can kind of tie this into Neighborhood Watch. And every one of the neighborhoods, we need to find people who are willing, have, in a sense, this compassion towards saving lives and being actively involved into the type of education that's going to be responsible, that everybody's going to need. So in case of an OSO type landslide or some type of emergency event, a major earthquake, and the phones are out, the streets are clogged, and people can't, maybe even kids are away at school, and we all of a sudden have to take a look around and say, we've got to band together and have some type of hierarchical ability. The police are busy, the fire department's busy, and so how do we effectively save lives? How do we become responsible? These earthquake are up in the deal, and I hope that before you leave, and I'll just make a brief comment about it. The DOGAMI, the State Department of Geology, created these LIDAR maps of Oregon City, and there you can take a look and see different areas that have susceptibility to landslides or some type of an event. And when you really think about it, it could come down and hit us anytime. So the CERT team effort is really, really important. It's just starting. Some of the attributes that they're looking for is people who have first aid or want to take the types of first aid training. You need to be able to find people that can go in to buildings that are down and rescue people out of down buildings. And so the training effort and the obligation will be literally at least 1 full day a month, virtually for the rest of your life. For everyone that gets involved, it's going to be a big deal, and there's going to be a lot of training up front to try to do it, to pull it together. But if we do this, Milwaukee has done it already. Happy Valley has done it, and we have this great opportunity to take care of ourselves. And so this is this opportunity for us to, for people to step up and be part of this initial cadre that's pulling it together. And it's going to take years to kind of bloom out, but we need some people with some real passion to step up to the plate to make this happen. And this is where I would love to think that each of the neighborhoods go out and try to look into the ranks of their neighborhoods and say, okay, who in my neighborhood might be somebody that that feels this way, kind of has the care and the compassion and the passion itself to step to the plate on this. And if we can find a bunch of people that want to do this, then they can be part of this original educational process, and they will be part of the teachers of the future. And it's just like in Milwaukee, I believe they have 40 people involved into this all in 4 years. And so we have to look at trying to find people that are willing to step up and do this. And anyway, in the long term, I think this is the type of thing that's just going to save lives. And I just hope that we have people that realize that we're sitting on a cliff and anything could happen, so let's be smart.
Thank you.
Alice?
Oh, yes. Mary Ann, you go first, and then we'll get Karen.
I'd just like to add, I believe that's absolutely important, and as I was just with CERT training this year at Willowbrook, so I would be happy to step up, be involved. I tried to get in touch with the person that I found out was with Clackamas Fire District 1 in Oregon City, and I didn't receive a call back, but I would love to be involved there, and because it's really true that the first responders are going to be people like us sitting in this room, because people are tied up in a big emergency, so it's really valuable work.
Karen?
Yeah, I actually worked with Gladstone to develop their plan for several years, and then began realizing that in the event of a natural disaster, the first thing to probably go out would be the bridges into Gladstone. And I'm not sure about my swimming skills in an emergency, so I had withdrawn from their program. But I like the idea of running into the collapsed buildings. I'll avoid that at all costs. One of the things that I found really interesting are the things you have to start looking at, one of which is who has a generator. Your emergency command post has got to be someplace that has a generator that you trust will be there in the event of a disaster. Where are you going to create a shelter? Is that shelter going to accept pets or not? If the shelter's not going to accept pets, who are your local veterinarians that can shelter pets? It's incredible when you've got the plan completely done, and there's a place for everybody to be a part of the plan, and I would love to be part of it.
Great. Two volunteers right there.
Oh, this is, can you, I have Karen's information, but I need to get yours to make sure. But we'll get it. This is going to happen, but we need more people. Mm-hmm. We need more people. We need people in Park Place. So, no one hide, please. Yeah. So everybody's got to. We've got 12 neighborhoods, and we need to make sure that we should really be thinking we have at least one person from every neighborhood.
Well, then let's just make this a goal when we come back in May to talk about the neighborhood watch. By then, hopefully, now some of you may not meet again between now and then, but if you do, talk about this at your neighborhood meeting. If you could put it on your agenda and get people talking about it now so that we can share some more information next month. And Rita wanted to make some comments, I believe.
There was a meeting in November regarding this subject. I know there was somebody there from Park Place. Were you there, Bob?
No, I wasn't.
Okay. There's some great materials already printed, and I have enough for my block. I just have it carefully stored under a table so it'll be
safe for any disaster.
It won't be damaged, no. But I will find out. There's thousands of copies, I think, already printed.
Right. And some of us have been to those meetings and have those same copies of information.
Yes.
Under our tables.
Yeah, yes. And after the earthquake last night, I thought I need to get something going in my...
If that was a wake-up call,
But when we're talking about neighborhoods, we also need to talk about our own little neighborhood where there might be children home from school whose parents aren't there. And also then this gives you an opportunity to list who has a generator, who has a saw.
That's where the neighborhood watch comes in, because
Yes.
ordinarily, if you've got enough people involved, then your neighborhood watch is only the perimeter of one block. But if you don't have enough people involved to take each block, then you're going to have to extend your boundaries. Harris, did you have some comments?
Push that button. Well, Paul, you had said that if you became a CERT volunteer, that then that would be a position you'd have for the rest of your life. I think that it might be hard to get a whole lot of volunteers with that.
Well, you know, it's
want to de-emphasize that point.
but it's kind of like I was part of Oregon Mountain Rescue when I was a child, and Mount Hood Ski Patrol, Sun Valley Ski Patrol, Garmisch Ski Patrol, and Alyeska Ski Patrol, and I've been in rescue efforts for a lot of my life, and it's kind of like something I can't walk away from. It's once you've been out there on the front lines trying to help somebody who needs help.
Understood.
It becomes ingrained into who you are.
Become
And that's
an adrenaline junkie?
no. It's if you can do it right and you can save a life, you got a responsibility.
Can I add to?
Yes, Tony.
Okay, so I was just talking to Pete about it, that I'm in, and I believe that if we spread the words around the neighborhoods, there's going to be a lot of young people that would be interested in that as well.
I think so too.
And they also have programs within CERT for young people. So there's so this is, yes, there's kind of they kind of idealistically see 16 and above. In some, it's kind of like the makeup and maturity of somebody, but then they do want to attract young people early on in their life.
It's a great training for young people. It gives them the values that we want them to grow up with.
Yes.
Yeah. And, it's something that will need to happen anyways, because when it hits, some of us are going to need help.
Right.
Everybody pretty much. If it's not happening to you directly, it's probably happening to a family member, a friend, in that neighborhood. So if we have a good number of people turn out to be able to this training, I think it would be good. That way we don't have to always, just wait around for the emergency personnel to get there. If the roads are blocked, they're not going to get to us on time. So we that are inside will have to figure out what to do before, real help gets there. But
okay.
Yeah.
Paul, can you report regularly to us
Yes,
about the
I
program
will.
that's getting started?
Yep. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I would like, in fact, I would love to have it put on the on as an agenda item for the next meeting.
All right. We can do that.
We will bring in then the organizers.
Oh, so you want them to speak at our next meeting? Is that what you're saying?
I would like to have them speak. The fire department and the coordinating person.
Okay. Katie, we just have one scheduled speaker so far, so that would work, wouldn't it? Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah, would you set that up? Okay. Okay, next we're going to move on to new business. And the first item of business is Katie bringing up our budget update, which she's faithful in doing for us as we requested.
One of each.
Fingers work.
Thank you for having me here tonight. I really appreciate the time to come before you and show you your budget.
Would you state your name and the city you live in?
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. I
We
forgot
probably
that
don't
part.
know who you are.
So this first spreadsheet up here is just the cost sheet that we go over each time that I come before you, except for that there is another change to it. At the last meeting, there was a change to the extra tabs, and that was the 5 cents. There you can see at the very top. It's like the fifth row down. And then the fourth row down and highlighted in yellow is a postage increase. The postage went up and we need to adjust for that. So I've added that in there, and you can see below the calculations if you use certain postcards what your total cost would be based upon the number of households in your neighborhood association. Are there any questions on that sheet?
No. No questions?
Yes, Rita.
Rita.
We talked at our last steering committee meeting that previously we had sent out a newsletter when we were going to have a meeting, and then the cost was too much. But what one of our members said was that there are so many new people moving into Oregon City. It would be a nice opportunity if for about November, when people are settled in, kids are back in school and vacations are over, that we might be able to send a newsletter out telling them the accomplishments of each neighborhood association so that they wouldn't want to be involved. And that would increase the cost considerably, but it would be something that we would like you to consider.
So does McLaughlin Neighborhood Association themselves want to send out a newsletter, or are they wanting like a newsletter put together with all of the neighborhood association information?
Well, I would say each individual neighborhood association. I mean, it would be up to them if they wanted to do it or not. But, you know, our neighborhood association has accomplished so much over the years, and we want people to know that all those beautiful trees in bloom were planted by our neighborhood association.
One suggestion I might make is that we have a quarterly trail news, and that doesn't cost the neighborhood association anything to put a little blurb in there if there is room. So if there's like an article that the neighborhood association wants to do, you know, like thanking people and saying, you know, these are our accomplishments for the year, maybe they want to do it once a year, maybe in the fall edition, it might be something to consider. That would not come out of your budget.
What month does that issue come out? In September, probably? Or
I think you have to submit your information by the end of June, beginning of July for the fall Trail News edition. Right now, we are working on the summer edition, and our information is due by the end of this week, I believe.
Okay.
Any other questions on this sheet? The cost sheet? Okay, and so then the next item that I will go over with you is the actual budget. This is pretty up to date, with the exception of a few people have mailers that they're just sending out that haven't been updated on this sheet because I haven't received a bill yet. So Hazel Grove and Gaffney Lane and Caulfield. I think that's about it. But you can take a look at, we have about $10,949.26 left at this point. We are right on track. I might want to point out South End has used pretty much all of their budget for this year, and
possible to request them out of the slush fund?
Well, actually, because this is a 2-year budget, we don't have to technically do that until we get to the end of the 2 years. So basically, you would just go into your next year's fund money. Does that make sense?
Because this won't go away at the end of this year.
Yes.
But they just have to remember that they're going to maybe fall a little shorter than next year.
Right. And some of the other ones as well. I know that, where were we? Hazel Grove will use some more of theirs this time. And yeah. So is there any questions about the actual budget to date?
Yeah.
Huh? Sure.
So it's
This budget ends in July? We actually are on a 2-year budget this year. So it will end July 2015. But this particular spreadsheet, I only did it for a year because we're so used to trying to keep our amounts within our budgeted allotted amount. And so it's easier for me to track it by each year.
So am I right, Collindale has enough for 2 mailings?
Yeah. For this, until that would end June 30th of 2014, but you still have all of next year before we have a new actual budget cycle.
And Katie, you're going to carry over this.
Yes,
whatever's
any
left now
leftover
will
in
carry
your
over
fund
still.
will carry over. And that's why, like South End, for example, like they only have $63.03, but technically they get their whole another $2,472.79 for the next year, because I do it in 1 year.
And that would be beginning in July, they get another.
It would be beginning in July, but
24/7.
if they need to use it before then they can, because it's not up to me to manage their budget for the 2-year cycle. I just like to show it this way so that you know if you're on track or not. So, for example, if they use theirs before the end of June 2014, before the beginning of the next, what would be the next budget cycle if we were on just annual cycles, then they know that they might have to be careful about spending their last year's worth of money, because they're probably going to run short again if they do exactly what they did this year.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
But they're more than welcome to, continue into using it until it's gone.
Okay. Are you guys doing something? Are they doing a postcard, or are they doing a newsletter?
We usually do a newsletter. We do a front and back 8.5 by 11.
Yeah. They do a newsletter.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, you might have to change it.
Yeah.
Yeah, McLaughlin loved to do newsletters, but it just became just too expensive. We couldn't do it anymore.
Right. And then again, let me remind you also that you're more than welcome to do up a newsletter and have it posted on your website, and then send out a postcard saying we have a newsletter on our website at this location.
Well, that's a very good idea.
That's a great
So
idea.
then again, you don't have to not do a newsletter.
Right.
You just can't mail it out to everyone.
Right.
So if you want to do up a newsletter, or you want to send me the information for your newsletter, I am more than happy to post it on your website, and then you send out your postcard stating this is when our next meeting is, and then say at the bottom of it, we also have submitted a newsletter on our website. Check out this link, and you'll see the newsletter. And I can also, when I send out the reminder email, and I usually include the postcard, I could also include that newsletter that you had made up. And I could also just send it out by email as well, when you first give it to me, and then send it out again as a reminder when I send out the reminder email the day before your meeting. So, I mean, there's several ways to get that out there if you want to do
very
it.
creative.
Yeah.
Katie, you talked about the Trello News. I haven't looked at it lately. It still has the meeting dates in there?
Yes. I update that every quarter.
Yeah, so, to remind people, if it is.
You have changed something to let me
if you
know.
have changed the dates like we did, you need to change those months you're going to have them and put the date. It doesn't take long to go through the calendar and say, okay, we're having it in April, then we have it in July, and we have it this month, October, and these are the dates, the third Thursday of the month.
And,
So-
and give Kathy and everyone the deadline again for the next trail news.
For the summer trail news, the deadline is, I want to say the 11th. What day is, today's the 7th?
April 11th?
No, I'm
June.
Yeah,
I thought
April
you said
11th.
April. Oh, April.
To do the summer one.
Summer.
Okay,
But-
April.
But if you're going to do another one, like fall or something, it'll be the end of June, beginning of July.
Okay.
Usually like around, I want to say July 7th or something.
Okay.
But for right now, every quarter, there is a one-page spread in there that has every single neighborhood association, their days that they meet, the location they meet, and usually the chair and vice chair and their contact information for every single neighborhood, and the CIC information's in there as well. That goes in every single trail news. And then I try to keep that up to date with any new officers, or if you change your date or your location or something like that. And I know there's a lot of changes this month, or this, I shouldn't say this month. There's a lot of changes for this summer trail news coming up. So I will try to do that up first thing in the morning and send it out by email. And if you could please take a look at that, because I know Barkley Hills had a location change. I know Tower Vista's changing their dates. I know there's been officer changes. You guys have a location change?
Well, we have a location change, and I have a question about that. We have a large banner that we had made up years ago with our old location address on it. Can I use some of our money to have that sign changed?
Careful, Katie, banners are illegal.
It's made.
My answer would be yes, with a caution. Yes, because I don't think that you have ordered a neighborhood association signs recently, but also to make sure that it's within your allotted budget. And then go through me, and I can get you some quotes and that kind of stuff, and make sure that it all goes through me. You don't go out and purchase it and then give me your reimbursement receipt to do. I do that part. And then also to make sure that you are aware of the sign code and the new updates coming through and all of that. So.
Oh, that doesn't bother me.
There's no enforcement, so why does he care?
Hey now.
I'll bring it up. I'll bring it up. And
if
show
you're
it
going
to
to
you.
use, huh?
I'll bring it up and show it to you.
Okay.
We can talk then.
Okay. So.
Make sure you don't get your arm behind your back.
Ingrid?
Do you update the numbers quarterly then? Of people moving into the neighborhoods?
I don't update the numbers quarterly, but the mailing labels get updated. I don't think it's quarterly. I don't know how often they do get updated, but I do know they get updated. Chris Dunlap in our GIS department is so fabulous at doing that, and he just does it without even, me asking or anything. So I will have to check as to how often that is updated, but I know that every time the printing company grabs those off of our website, it's the most up to date.
So has our budget changed according
No.
to how many?
No.
So for 2 years, if we really grow, then we just don't get any.
Right.
And come talk to those of us that don't.
Yeah. There's no way to divvy up the funds if it's always constantly changing like that. If you guys are always having more, then I've already spread it all out. If I had to give you more, then I'd have to take it from somebody else. How do you change it? Once it's set, it's set. You try to live within that amount. But then again, this year it's a 2 years. So if you have any leftover, you can use that. And then, like we started last year or the year before, that at the end of this 2-year cycle, if there's a time that comes to the very end and we have money left over that others haven't used, you can always come and ask to borrow funds from other neighborhood associations.
Because if you don't use it, you don't get it the next 2 years.
That's true. Well, not technically like that, but.
Is there any way to control when the cards get mailed out? Because time before last, I got the card on a Tuesday. I picked it up on my way to the meeting. And this last time it came, I said, oh, it came on Friday. This is great. It's 5 days. It was the Friday the week before that it came on. So I got the card on Friday, and then a week from Tuesday was the meeting. And that was too early. The other one was too late. Is there any way, the Friday before would be perfect, because we meet on Tuesday.
Yeah.
But we can't control that? Is that up to the post office?
I will look into that. I feel like it's been with this year with the new printing company, and I think that we're using a new post office. I think it's been a little bit more difficult to control when we submit the stuff versus and then when it actually hits the mailbox. I know we've asked for more lag time in between this time around to try to make sure that they're getting them before the meeting, but I still feel like it's such a long process. Some of them, it takes maybe, like when we get them to the printing company, they only take, a day or two to get them printed, but then they send them right to the post office. But then the post office they may go out the next day, or they may take 7 days before they go out. It just depends on the process. And they tell us, I think it's 7 to 10 business days is what it could take. But it doesn't always take that. And I'm not sure if it's because I really need to look into it because I'm just not. I'm not positive on this, but I feel like when we used ECP, I feel like they used Westland Post Office, and with Buell's, I feel like we're using Oregon City Post Office, and I don't know if that's just a different practice with the two post offices and how they process the bulk mailing.
I mean, can we tell them it's time sensitive? Because I know that they may not want to process it if they have a whole lot of other, I call it junk mail, but you know, advertisements and stuff that go out. Now, I get certain advertisements every Wednesday. I get the same thing every single Wednesday. So, I mean,
yeah. I'll need to look into it as I tracked it one time and it was like, you know, right on time. It was, you know, perfect amount of time. But then I tracked it also during the holiday season and it was really bad, like really bad. But I need to do it again, and I'll look into, you know, I'll start tracking when I submit it to the printing company, and then I'll have them email me when they've dropped it off at the mailbox, and then I'll get the postcard in the mail and track that time. And then I'll just need to either talk to the post office to try to figure out why it's taking, you know, and why it's different, like why some days it's, you know, it takes 3 days and why someday it takes 10 days. And maybe that's just, you know, maybe they have staffing issues, maybe that they have a lot to process that day. I don't know. I'll just have to talk to him and see, but I can definitely, the next time I do the budget or sooner, I can report back on that.
Any other questions from the membership? Okay, thanks, Katie, for doing this automatically for us. You're really good about keeping us on track. Okay, before we move to committee reports, I just wanted to share that next meeting, Todd Last is going to share with us under new business ways to encourage or citizen participation and get some ideas from us as well, and that's going to be on the agenda for May.
Wait, then we have 3 presentations.
But that's just under new business. It's not really a formal presentation.
Okay.
Is that all right with you, Todd, that I could put it under new business?
Sure.
Okay. And you can sit here if you want to, I suppose.
Sure.
Okay. All right. The chair. All right, let's move on to committee reports. Our first committee report is our nominating committee for the election in May. And Tom, would you like to give us your report?
I have a handout here from the election committee, or the nominating committee, rather. Nominating committee consists of Kathy Hogan and Mike Behrman and myself. And we have been actively asking each of the members of the CIC whether or not they would like to put their name in nomination for replacing the very difficult to replace Alice, as she is finding it necessary to resign. We've had 4 individuals who have expressed an interest in serving, and we asked each of the 4 to provide us with a summary of why they felt they had some excellent qualifications to serve as chair. I'll let you read this between now and the May meeting. That's when the elections themselves will take place. The other process that has been suggested, and I need your input on this, it was suggested that perhaps we want to have the opportunity to have kind of a question and answer session of the candidates at that May meeting. I would like to ask for your input as to whether that's something you want. I don't want to make that decision. I think that's a decision the entire body needs to decide whether they want to go through a question and answer session or just simply rely on the information that's been provided that I've handed out. Beg pardon?
Have you done that before?
It's sometimes been done, but not always. And so it's...
We don't have any information from Tony, and it would be nice. We do have these nice statements, but it would be nice to know what his platform
Yeah, I did
is.
send you something in the email, in a Word format, but it was just this evening.
Maybe you can send it to Katie, because I will unfortunately not be here in May, and so I've asked Kathy Hogan to kind of take over for the nominating committee at the May meeting. I will be out of the country, and so I won't be able to participate in that. But
Did I raise my hand?
You raised your hand, yes. And I accepted your offer.
Tom, I had a question though.
Yes.
Because when you sent me the email about the whole nominating stuff, you didn't quite, wasn't broken down or outlined what duties of the chairperson is. And I was thinking, to be able to nominate myself or to get into a position where I like to serve, and I would like to know what I'm getting to exactly and how, what the duties entail.
We've all received, I think, a copy of the CIC bylaws, and it's very well spelled out in there as to what the roles and the responsibilities of all three officers are. So if you want to look at that and get a feel for what each position has as far as responsibilities.
Tom, also as a reminder, this is just to finish out Alice's term.
Correct.
Which would end in December. So my opinion...
We'll be holding more elections
right.
come.
My opinion would be not to have it be a huge time taking up if we already have 3 presenters,
Exactly.
but that's just my
Right.
opinion.
Yeah.
It's just,
And I think that these statements that have been provided are very timely and very succinct. Tony, if you could do the same thing so that all the members...
And then maybe Katie could get it out to us
Yeah,
by
and then
email.
we would have
whatever
everybody's
Tony
statement, and
submits.
maybe a question and answer wouldn't be required. then.
Good.
And then actually, Alice, what you read, is that in the bylaws, or is this something you had kind of formulated to open up the meeting? So,
She's done that herself.
yeah, so that might be helpful to the candidate or the person that.
The script
get-
that you used to open the
Yeah.
meeting.
Oh,
might-
sure.
Yeah, it might be something you would.
Something to be
forward get
passed on.
Whoever,
Yes,
whoever is elected. Okay.
So, the other thing I should offer is, even though you've had a chance already to determine whether or not you wanted to submit your name, I'm accepting nominations from the floor. Self-nominations in particular, Steve. Because I didn't poll you, Steve, in the initial because you
Yeah,
weren't.
I didn't know where I was.
You weren't on the list. You weren't on the list of CIC members at that point in time.
Do you know where you are now?
I feel like Kathy.
Did I raise my hand?
I'll pass it this time.
Hearing no nominations from the floor.
Tony has another
Our
question, I think.
proposed list is as stands.
Yeah, I have one more question.
Oh, okay.
So I noticed that Amy is nominated as well. So with the chair position going on, would that mean that your position will be vacated? And then what happens to that
We would probably vote on a new secretary position then.
at the same time?
Or because, like you said, it's not for the remainder of the year, we could also entertain a motion for someone just to take notes to
Right.
do the
Right.
minutes for the rest of the year.
If Amy were elected,
We
then
would
we
could
would
decide that.
We would have a secretary pro tem until such time as we wanted to hold an election, or just wait.
Or if Amy wanted to do both positions.
We have a couple questions over here.
Do we not have a process to replace the chairperson already in the bylaws?
Yes,
Yes.
and that's what we're going through right now. The nominating committee was
The vice
established.
chair does not replace the chair.
No,
No.
I see.
no.
The nominating committee was established at our last meeting, Steve, and we bring forth the candidates at this meeting, and the election takes place at the next meeting.
Okay.
Now-
Did you have a question? No. Okay.
We do have a process, though, for the vice chair to step up on a temporary basis. If Alice was to be gone for a meeting, or if the chair position was to be gone for a meeting, then the vice chair would take over and run the meeting during that time. But since Alice is actually stepping down from the position, then we felt that it fell under the category of, I actually think it's specifically stated in there.
Oh,
if
I didn't
they
realize
don't,
you were vacating the
Right, well,
position.
that's because you didn't know where you were.
The longer you know me, the more that...
No respect.
That's where I am.
You come back when you get picked on.
Yeah. Welcome back, Steve. Yeah, welcome back. Nothing's changed. Katie, can we count on you to create some ballots?
Absolutely.
Okay, okay. It will be a written ballot as the last time, and that's the way we created it in the bylaws.
And verbally spoke into the record.
Yes, yes. Okay, thanks, Tom. Nice job. Public safety. Todd, is there anything you want to share? Okay. Land use, I know, Paul, I spoke with you earlier. No land use. Transportation, Bob, you provided a very good written report, and is there anything you want to point out to the group that you thought was worthy of just stating once again?
No, this says it all.
Okay, all right.
We love you, Bob.
Yeah, the one thing that was thrilling to me, although it's still in process, is the traffic issue at Dutch Brothers.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm really glad you're working on that.
That's the hard one.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, lastly, we have our round table, and Rita, this is when everybody goes around, has an opportunity to share something significant from their neighborhood. So we're going to start with Ingra so that you get a feel for it before it's your turn.
I'm going to pass to
Mary Ann.
because I wasn't there at the meeting.
Okay.
I wasn't at the meeting either, but I did talk to someone who was and said we had 25 attendees at our March meeting, which was excellent. Most of them were talking about the facility that's to be built for the drug rehabilitation center. So that was big. And then we had the Maureen Cole from the library, or someone. She was scheduled. I'm hoping she's one that showed up, but that's it.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
We had a very busy meeting last week, and we heard about the Lynn Avenue concept plan by John. Metro, we had a report from Metro on the Newell Creek Canyon project. The Carnegie Library we heard about, and the mayor was there to tell us about that. And then Neighborhood Watch. And we had quite a few people that came from this one neighborhood because they were concerned about transients living in Hillendale Park. And so Chris Wadsworth followed up with them afterward, and she's got some police checking it out, and they didn't find anything. So anyway, but those neighbors were very concerned about, they said there was a couple living there, and they felt like they weren't being heard, so they came to our meeting to try to be heard. So anyway, we hope the group will come back again, but anyway, Chris is working with them on that, so that was all.
Thank you.
It is very, very nice to be back.
Very, very nice to have you back.
I want to thank you all for the wonderful, wonderful bouquet of flowers that you all sent in the card. It really impressed me. All I got to say is be prepared, and Paul will. I'm in your court, man. We all have to be prepared for the worst, but expect the best. And it's just good to be here.
We agree. It's good to have you here. Karen?
I'm going to defer the neighborhood information to Harris, but I'll throw a few other things in. Take a look at the lobby. The new art exhibit was hung this week. It's photographs from the Museum of the Oregon Territory. It's kind of an extension of our Ralph Eddy photo exhibit. We moved some of the pictures down here when we took the exhibit down. And speaking of photographs, as Amber noted, the new Oregon City Around Town will be coming out. The cover photo was taken at the Kenema Bluffs Natural Area. There's an article on hiking in the Kenema Bluffs Natural Area. The cover photograph was taken by Grant Pauley, who was 12 years old last year when he took that photograph. And inside there's pictures by his sister Gretchen, who was 10, and was the winner last year, as my segue, of the youth category of the National Preservation Month photo contest. That is jointly sponsored by the Historic Review Board and the Clackamas County Historical Society. But during the month of May, we asked people of all ages to go out in Oregon City and take a photograph of something that they'd like to preserve, or they'd like to see preserved. A natural area, a yard, a house, a commercial building. And the photographs need to be taken between the 1st and the 31st of May. They're submitted online to the city, need to be in by June 15th. The website will be, the city website and the museum website will both have all of the photo contest information up. This year, Citizens Bank is sponsoring the prizes. We have $75 to the adult winner, $50 to the teen winner, and $25 to the youth winner. And if you win, you never know where your picture might show up.
Okay, I just have one item here from the Oregon City Lions. They are stepping in to help out with the Teddy Bear Parade this year, and that will be on Saturday, May 3rd at 10:30. It is a parade that's about 1.1 miles, and it's, I don't know if it begins at Clackamas Park?
No.
No, ends at Clackamas Park.
Starts at 10:30.
Okay, and the purpose of the parade hasn't changed. The mission is to gather new teddy bears and stuffed animals that are given to law enforcement agencies, fire departments, children's hospitals, emergency rooms, and the Children's Center. The parade honors the community emergency personnel who protect the entire community, and they actually are sending a personal invitation to invite CIC and or neighborhood associations who want to participate in the parade this year to, they've given a bunch of applications here, so if you're interested in walking, if you walk in the parade, I believe there's no cost. If you have some sort of a vehicle or something, then there is a cost for that. So if your neighborhood association, you want to get a couple people together, you want to hold one of your signs and walk in the parade, you just have to fill out the application and submit it. Let's see what the deadline is here. Registration deadline is April 28th. And so I'll have some of these for you to take at the end. That's it.
Does anybody know when the citywide cleanup is? It's in April. What day that is?
26th. Yes, and it's on our website. Let me look it up really quick.
Yeah, I just got
Pretty
an
sure
email
it's the
from Nancy
26th.
today.
Yeah.
26th? Okay. I just wanted to be sure that was brought up. And Park Place, we're mainly involved in land use issues. There's not much else going on over there except a big hullabaloo about that. And that's pretty much it for Park Place.
Actually, since you brought that up, I'm sorry, I should have brought that up. The Earth Day cleanup is April 26th. The registration's at 8:30 at Clackamas Park. It goes usually from 9 to noon. And then also that same day is the 2014 Spring Shred It and Cell Phone Turn-In event up at the police department.
From 9 to 12.
Yes.
I did.
And then there's a light lunch.
You're right. I did forget one thing. Park Place, now we're going through our bylaws, adapting them to the latest information, whatever you want to call it. I don't know what it is about me that there must be a magnet in me and
Bylaw changes.
bylaws. I don't know. It just happens.
Gaffney Lane has their quarterly meeting Thursday, April 24th. I believe it's the 24th. We have scheduled someone coming from the Clackamas Repertoire Theater. That's at Clackamas Community College. That's going to be kind of exciting. She contacted me and wanted to come and hand out some free tickets. So if anybody wants to try to get a free ticket, they should come to that. And also, I think we have the library board, and we have need of, once again, we have need of officers. And so I hope to address that at the meeting. Also, that's at the Meadows Courtyard, which is behind Biscuits at 7 o'clock.
I'm going to pass and let Rita report.
Yes, the 874 homeowners in the Hazel Grove Westling Farms neighborhood are very, very pleased that after many years of not having a park in their neighborhood, even though they've been paying system development charges for the most part on all those things, are making some progress. Both the master plans for Glen Oaks Park and Filbert Run Park are hopefully about to start. Submissions have been received from proposals, and the people who read those proposals and evaluated them turned them back into our wonderful Scott Archer, and he is reviewing them to determine what consultant should be hired to conduct those two master planning processes. That doesn't mean we've got a park yet. It simply means that kind of like Kenema. They had a master plan, and 10 years later, they got a park. But you can't get a park until you get a master plan. And so we're hopeful that
Well, you've
sometime...
got a ticket now.
We're hopeful sometime in the next century we might have a park, actually, in our neighborhood.
And Tom told I was let you know I have two things. I'll do the neighborhood association first. Our meeting is Thursday, April 17th. We have TriMet coming. Doug Neely will come and talk about the library, and we have the art theater group coming to talk. And we have a few land issues. We're still working and hasn't been deemed complete on that cell tower in the school grounds in John McLaughlin, which I can say I'm opposed to. The radiation for children, I think it could be better in another location. Aside from that, Phyllis Talk and Phil Hart is working very, very hard on doing fundraisers, and Five Guys Burgers and Fries, the Oregon City one at OC Point, this Thursday at 10, which is April 10th, 12 to 9 o'clock. This is through BCT. They are doing 5. They're doing Clark's Elementary Music and Arts Education, Father Hart Street Ministry, Oregon City, Backpack Buddies, Phyllis Talkie, Phil Hart, my favorite, and Meals on Wheels. And you have to take a flyer, and from 12 to 9, you can go for lunch and dinner. And I have like 5 or 6 of these flyers, so if you would like one after the meeting, I will give you. And all 5 of those charities are going to enjoy the proceeds, the 15%, which is more than we do at other. And we have another Oregon City Burgerville, May 1st. We're going to do that one, but that starts about like 5:30, I forget, till 8 or 8:30. But and they will give us proceeds. And then we have Bingo, May 10th, and we have the Taste, December 4th. Yes, we're doing it again. Yes. So hopefully, we'll all have a good time. So if you would like, I can have it.
Paul?
Kenema Neighborhood Associations has its next meeting again Thursday, this coming Thursday, over the 17th, April 17th. We had a kind of an emergency meeting a month ago to put together a nominating committee to nominate and to create a vote on new officers. And we've had a lot of land use issues, and one of the reasons why I got those maps is because Kenema is in a landslide susceptibility area that's is second virtually to no place in Oregon City. And we have a lot of infill houses that continually get built, and the code says on 1744 on hazardous areas and landslides that anytime you have a slope over 25%, you really shouldn't be building. Well, we still build, and so now the question is, we go back, and there was a major presentation at the last city commission meeting where there was a discussion by Christine Kozlowski. Now that I got it all fouled up. But Christine is an expert on landslides, and we're in an area, and our code has not really responded, and it's going to be one of those things that's got to really be generated. And it's if we don't do something to get a little bit smarter, we could end up like many areas around where there's somebody cuts away the toe of a slope, you think you're okay, and you find yourself down at the bottom of the hill. Okay, and those conditions exist, and if we don't do something, and it's like Waterboard Park, it's really the insurance company came along and said to the city, there's a liability, and we've got to be responsible for it. So there's a problematic world. We got to get our heads on it I hope that somebody wants to take a look at those before I take them down tonight, so you can take a look where your actual house is, or some areas where you might have concerns.
Thank you. Tony?
So Berkeley Hills, so far so good. We have a meeting coming up tomorrow, and I have a few speakers. Cindy Smith, from the managing director for the Clackamas Repertory Theater, and also John, Oregon City Public Works, coming out to, and also the library PAC to discuss the library ballot measure and stuff. So I'll have better updates at the next meeting, but for now, yeah.
Okay. Todd?
Our Vista's having a meeting this Wednesday, and it's going to sound suspiciously familiar. We're having the Repertory Theater, the library, and the Public Works coming to our meeting. And then our next meeting, we have scheduled the tax assessor to come out and talk about property taxes. So that should
we
be
want to
good.
hear
Wow, yeah.
That's all I have.
Harris?
Say ditto, huh?
Yeah.
We had our March meeting on the 20th, and John Gurrell and John Lewis came and discussed the concept plan for Lynn Avenue, etc. Karen presented the library. That was like preaching to the choir. And we're also going to have our annual hanging plant sale the week before Mother's Day, which Diane McKnight rounded that up. June is going to be the Neighborhood Watch will be presented, and also Clackamas Repertory Theater. Thank you.
I could say been there, done that.
Yeah.
We've had that speaker, and I have a free ticket for the theater, and it's very interesting how the community has responded from the time they began the theater to how many people really do enjoy the place. We are real concerned about traffic, as Denise said earlier, and we're sharing with the city another slow down sign for our neighborhood. There's only so many ways up the hill in Oregon City, and it doesn't all go the bypass. And so it's not the amount of traffic, it's the speed of the traffic that's of concern. And we also had a neighborhood cleanup on 7th Street. I can't remember the date, I wasn't a participant. But anyway, it's just so amazing how much junk is thrown out. And they said they were really surprised. They worked their way up the hill, and as they came back down the hill, they still found debris that needed to be picked up. So anyway, I think that covers us.
Do you want to talk about the speed sign that went up on Washington? Is that one activated yet?
Yes, that one's on at 9th and Washington. Mm-hmm. There's one that's been there for a while. Mm-hmm. I think the other one, they're talking about 7th Street.
Okay.
But I'm not sure.
Okay.
I should say that since there's all these witnesses.
The reason I wanted
tell you.
The reason I wanted Rita to mention that is because the McLaughlin neighborhood shared in the purchase of a speed sign so that we could have one in our neighborhood that would not go away. Mm-hmm. It's because it's a real problem. Well, every neighborhood it's a problem, but we just decided that we were going to put our money where our mouth was. And
We have the one right now in Kenema,
mm-hmm.
the new one that the city has, and boy, that's the one. It needs to be rotated, and it has electronic counting of vehicles and tracking, and transmits those speeds and vehicle counts to Public Works. So if you've got a street that's problematic, this is the baby you want to get. Make sure you get it in there, because you can really hone down on it and say, okay, this is actually what's happening. Mm-hmm. So this is really great technology. We need more of those, but this is the first one, and they put it up in my area. So, but it's ready to be rotated.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. We had a really effective meeting tonight. We are adjourned.